So, welcome to the June 6th meeting of the Mono Basin Historical Society. We've got a great presentation coming up. Scott Stein will be here right about 6:30 to start the presentation. But so we've got a few announcements and discussions and stuff to go over. So the first thing is I just wanted to remind everyone we still need a recording secretary. And we're recording our meetings, so we do have a record, but we really should have a written record as well. And so I'm really reaching out to the folks in Zoom land, thinking that while you're enjoying these meetings via Zoom, someone may be able to take minutes. And if you're thinking that maybe you could do that for us, it would be greatly appreciated. And if you could send me an email, that would be awesome. So, or tell us in the chat and we can say your name and cheer. Okay, and this is our a big reminder. Next month, the meeting is not on Monday, July 4th. We've moved it to Tuesday, July 5th. So when we send out our meeting reminders, I'll be sure to highlight that, but just so that, another reminder for us, because I think a lot of us were sort of programmed for Monday. This is our second hybrid meeting being run. So Rich is on the East Coast and he's running the Zoom meeting from there. And the meeting, and so it'll be up on our YouTube channel. I usually on Facebook when it's up on the YouTube channel. But it's okay. So let's see. So this is, I just want to again put a shout out to Rich that he's in the East Coast and he is able to do this for us. And yay, Rich! And we'll be glad to have you back next month, which we're very happy because he's doing the presentation next month. So also just want to let everyone know that the museum is open. We opened the museum Memorial Day weekend. We're open 10 to 4 and we are closed this Friday, but beginning next week, we're going to be able to be open this Wednesday, we're closed. But then next week, we will be open 7 days a week. And we just feel really fortunate to be able to do this. There are a lot of businesses in town that are closed 1 or 2 days a week because lack of staffing. And we're fortunate. We have volunteers. We have our new museum coordinator, Jarrett, and he will be next month. He'll give us a museum report. And then we have a local high school student, Alden Sieberling, and she's going to begin next week, and she'll be there on Wednesdays. And I think this might be really an interesting time to have one of our local students in the museum. We catch a lot of questions about what it's like to live here, what it's like to go to school here. And so Alden is a very engaging young lady, and I think that it'll be really nice to have her there. So we feel blessed that we're open 7 days a week beginning next week. I don't know if for all of you that go by the museum, drive by the museum, you've probably seen the original signs that were put up many, many years ago that say Mono Lake Museum, or the signs that indicate that we're a history museum have been peeling and chipping for quite a few years. And the original folks that donated them are no longer in business to see if they could fix the signs for us. So we ordered 2 new signs that are not quite as large. The ones that we have are 2 by 4. These will be 2 by 3. and but they're metal, so I don't think we'll have the peeling that we have now. So that should be really exciting once we get those. Hopefully they'll be here someday next week, and get those put up. We have a lot of events coming up. So the next event is coming up is our early birder breakfast that is in connection with the bird Chautauqua, and it'll be June 18th. And Lenore Toomey is handling all the coordination of this effort. And yay! And Lenore, you want to come up and give us a update, what's happening? I know she's been collecting $1 bills. I don't know. Hey, Rich. Oh, yeah, I think so. I'm Dave Carl. There you go. Yes. Here you go.
It's Be Dave Carl Day.
There you go.
It's the official start of Be Dave Carl Day. Anyway, I'm Lenore Toomey. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Mono Basin Historical Society Early Birder Breakfast, because it's from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. So we get up with the birds to feed the birders. We've received some generous donations from local businesses. The Mono Market, Sam and Julian have donated, Nancy from Nicely's, Linda and Dave Dorr from Epic Cafe, Rebecca Watkins and the Presbyterian Church. Everybody is generously donating baked goods and quiche and sticky buns. We're going to have a lot of good stuff. We're going to have a breakfast parfait. It should be good. Hopefully, if you feel like coming by, you can stop by and say hi. I'm still looking for maybe somebody to help serve coffee and home-baked muffins or something that would be appropriate for like a take-and-go breakfast. So if there is anybody here that would like to bake a half dozen muffins and have them go toward the fundraiser for the Historical Society, we'd be happy to have them.
Or they can put it in the chat.
Or you could put it in the chat. If you're local, you'd have to get them here somehow by the 18th. So there is, and we're going to have, it's looking like we're going to have the $3 breakfast. We're coming up with a pretty much of a $3, and hopefully we'll receive some generous donations, tips. The donation jar will be out, and people will hopefully round up their $3 breakfast. So,
all right.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for this effort as well. You're welcome, Robert. Thank you. Linda, did you want to talk about the basket? Okay, you want me to bring it to you, or do you want to come up here? Okay. Linda's going to talk about the birder basket.
Yes, we have a birder's basket, bird lover's basket that we are raffling, and it's in the museum right now. And then at the breakfast, I'll be selling tickets. So that's going on, and then we will have the drawing on that Saturday. So, and then we'll have to find out, hopefully a Chautauqua visitor will win it.
Linda, if they're not here, like if we had some people that are Zooming and aren't going to be here, if they wanted to buy tickets, and if they're not here, are we going to send it? So we would send it. And now we don't have tickets for sale online, but if you would, if you're interested in the birder basket, it is beautiful. I wish we had it here to show you. It's, Linda's got wine glasses in there with bird etching on them. There's bird books. There's, I think, some dish towels with birds. My favorite is the origami birds. There's just a lot of really neat stuff in there. So if you're interested, you can call, and if you're not in town, you can call the museum, and I think maybe we could work out being able to sell them over the phone and fill the ticket out for you. Oh, okay. The tickets are $1 each or 6 for $5. Okay. And let's see. And then our next event, we've got 2 events coming on the same day, July 23rd. We've got Artists and Ice Cream. And Priscilla, I think you're out there if you want to get on and give us an update.
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
You can. Okay. This is Priscilla Hawkins, and I am heading up an event which is called Artists and Ice Cream. It's going to be on July 23rd in Hess Park, so outdoors. That'll be from 10 till 3. It is a free event, and we will have artists from the area. So far, I have 4 different artists. They each have a table and bring their items to sell to you. Each artist only pays $25 to us as part of our fundraiser to have their table there. But then I also ask each artist to donate one of their pieces for our drawings. So we last year was our first year. We didn't charge anything, but we really did very well. We had a lot of generous people there. I think we had about 100 people who attended. And there's also going to be live music playing. So anybody who comes can get an ice cream sundae, and those are being donated from the community. And we also will have raffle drawings. Each artist, what they donate to us, we have it out on a table, and they will have a drawing every hour where we will then draw people's names. And if you're not there when we draw your name, then we will send you one of the items. We have quite a good variety. So now, if you know anybody who would like to be an artist, because I still could use some more artists, please contact me, Priscilla Hawkins. Should I give my contact information?
Sure.
Okay, so that's telephone number is 248-904-6013. I think that's it. Any questions you can think of?
Doesn't look like it. Priscilla, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for heading up this fundraiser.
Yes, glad to.
And so on the same day, we figure we're going to take up the whole Matley Street, because we're going to have, on the one end of the street will be the Artists and Ice Cream. And here at the community center, we're going to have an Indian taco sale. And Janice Mendez is handling that for us. And so the way I've got it figured, people can look at the artwork, purchase some artwork, get some raffle tickets, come down here, get Indian tacos, and then go back up and get dessert. It sounds like it'll be a fun Saturday. So is Janice there that she'd like to give us an update on the Indian taco sale? There she is.
Yeah, my internet's. I'm excited to get this going for.
Oh, I don't know if we can get the internet.
Posting along the highway.
Yeah. Janice is frozen. So hopefully Janice can hear me. anyone that's interested in helping with this event, either put it in the chat or email me and I'll get it over to Janice. She has already got people to do the cooking, but she needs folks to take people's money and hand out the food. And
Okay, I'm sorry
so,
about that.
oh,
Yeah. So we will need 2 more volunteers. Otherwise, we're good to go.
okay, we need 2 more folks. Okay, thank you, Janice. This is, I think this is exciting. It's going to be fun to see. This is our very first one of these that we have done. And at least when I was down in Bishop, they were quite crowded at the Indian taco sales. Oh, and the hours of the taco sale are 10 or 11 to 4 or 10 to 4. It's 11 to 4, right? I think it's 11 to 4. She figured she'd get people lunch and early dinner.
Yes. Awesome.
Exactly. Okay. And then we've got the ghost tour to talk about. And you want to talk, Dave? Because now the real Dave Carl will come up. Okay.
Hello. So the Ghosts of the Sagebrush Tour, we talked about this last month, if you were here with us. I'm still struggling with the title that we settled on. I think it was, but this is subject to your suggestions. The Roaring Historic Decade, 1922 to 1932. 1922 to 1932. I'm sorry. If you want to go back to 1822, that's before von Schmidt came over the hill and surveyed here. That's before any mining. We can get the Kozetica to do that one. So, no, actually. So the purpose of this focus on that roaring decade is that a century ago, 1922, a number of things happened, including it's the anniversary of the Mono Lake School, and our museum is in the old schoolhouse building, and so it goes back a century now. That year, some other schools shut down that had been operating, like up at the Goat Ranch and around. We're going to talk about schools. We may have one of the teachers, a young woman at the time, but Nora Archer may show up and talk to us. We hope so. We're working on that. You have to dig her out of the cemetery where she's still buried up there. I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding. So the rest of the decade, also very important for this local history. It's in this 10-year period that Levining was established. It's in a number of our lodging places that are still around are celebrating these special anniversaries too, including the El Mono Hotel was established mid-century, or about 1926, I guess it was. 1932, the significance of that 10-year span is 1932 was the year that 90 years ago when Lakeview Lodge was established, and they approached us about doing something to celebrate their anniversary, their 90th. That's the Banta family. I think I've been talking to them about having Rita Banta, who's the matriarch of the family, living in Bishop these days, be present and share some of her old stories. And there'll be more, but that's where we're headed. It will be, on the Friday, we always have a dinner. This will be Friday, August 26th, if I got it right. We will be at the Mono Inn again, and we really are pleased with that. What's the anniversary at the Mono Inn?
100 years. 100 years for the Mono Inn.
Mono Inn was established. That was a big year, 1922. And so we will be marking that. And then on Saturday, we do our daytime tour. And this year the tour will basically be in town. We won't be spreading too far afield, but we'll begin at the building we're going to be celebrating, the Old Schoolhouse Museum. And we will eventually be over at Lakeview Lodge. They're going to host us on their grounds, give us a tour of parts of the Lakeview Lodge maybe you've never seen. And we hope to finish up, we have to confirm this, at the Presbyterian Church, if it's available for us, because we have some video we want to run of various aspects of this whole story. So it should be a great day. And what are the tickets?
Okay, the tickets are the Mono Inn dinner night on Friday night is $35, and the tour is $30, and lunch is included in that. And I hope to have those available on our website to purchase by next week. And the tickets. And what we'll do is I'll put an announcement on Facebook, and then I'll also send to our email group that they're out there, and they will be ready to purchase. And we think it'll be a great time. The dinner usually sells out. And so I encourage you, if you're going to be here, to get the tickets early. The other thing is, one of our members reminded me to remind people that are coming from out of town, if you're planning on coming across Tioga Pass this year, even though you're just passing through, you still need to have a reservation. So unless you come after 4 o'clock in the afternoon or before 6 o'clock in the morning. Oh, really? Okay, okay. Okay, so that's just something wonderful for us to hear. So if we have a driver's license from local, from Bishop to Bridgeport, then we are able to go through without a reservation. So yay, yay. Just to drive through. So, okay, and let's see. Anything else on the ghost?
I hate to tell you about things I haven't confirmed yet, but at one point, Tim Banta said that the Basin Cafe that's on the grounds of the Lakeview Lodge might be our source of lunch this year for the tour day. So we'll see how that works out. We're hopeful. I see a question over here, Robert Yoki.
I'd like to get a poster together and bring it to the Hayden Cabin Museum on the Sagebrush tour. We'd be very happy to promote that.
Robert is offering to the help of the Hayden Cabin Museum in Mammoth once again for promoting once we get our posters and flyers out. And did you tell people how to buy tickets if they're not local?
We're going to have them on our website, on our online store. So they will, and I'll send out an email when they're there. Like I said, it's probably going to be Monday. I usually work on this stuff on Sunday, so hopefully we'll get that done. So I think that's it on all of our events. Yes, Linda. Oh, okay. And we will have our usual art raffle, and this year the artwork is a reproduction of the painting that is on our website. It is a painting of the schoolhouse with some children walking up to it. It's really quite a lovely painting and a tribute to the schoolhouse. So we'll have that on the flyer information as well. And those are the same thing, $1 each or 6 for $5. And the last thing we have is I'd like to set up a meeting in the next couple of weeks to just discuss projects that we have. And if you're interested, if you would either put something in the chat that you'd like to attend those meetings, or send me an email. The projects that we're discussing are our outdoor displays, the Felicina House, Log Cabin Mine, and the Clover House. Hopefully we can meet within the next couple of weeks, just depending on people's schedules that I already know that will want to be there. So I think that's about enough of me talking. It's right about 6:30. Yes,
Could we take like 2 minutes so everybody can wash their dishes before we can take
you got it.
water and
We're going to take a dishwashing break for about 2 minutes. So I did want to let you all know that next month, Tuesday, July 5th, Rich Foy will be presenting. And he's going to be presenting mono names. And Rich, would you like to give us a little teaser?
Well, here on the Eastern Slope, things get named a little differently than they do in the rest of North America. And we're going to have a not particularly serious look by not a historian, but a storyteller, me.
That sounds like it's going to be quite entertaining. I told Rich when he told me the name of his presentation that someone came in the museum this weekend and said, you know, mono means monkey in Spanish. Do monkeys live on the island? And I said, not that I know of. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to turn back over to Dave so that he can introduce our speaker.
Thank you. I guess I'll give you something to look at. I don't know. In the background, we've had the opening slide of Scott Stein's program that he's going to give tonight. And I'm happy to say that it also tells a little bit about Scott. So if you've read that, you know that he's Dr. Scott, or he's got a PhD. He was a professor for a whole career at Cal State University used to be Hayward, and now it's called the East Bay campus of the State University system. A professor of geography, hydrogeography, geography and environmental science, Scott just told me. And now he has this relationship, even though he's retired from that, the State University, where he's associated with Columbia University. But and we could go on and on about Scott. He's published many papers. What I want to tell you is, just before I turn this over to you over to him, is that when Janet and I came here in 1982 to work as state park rangers at Mona Lake, one of the earliest encounters I had out around the lake was with Scott Stein. And then I had many, many more. And it always was informative and interesting. And Scott is he's a very dynamic person. The role he played in protecting Mona Lake is related to the story you're going to hear tonight, because Scott is the expert who became expert in explaining to decision makers like the State Water Resources Control Board what the history was about the lake elevation here. When 1982, it bottomed out. In recent history, that was the lowest point it had been since the Mona Lake water diversions began. But the people who had to make these decisions, they didn't really know what it meant to say that the lake was at a certain elevation back in 1941, and the lake was, what was natural? What kind of lake elevation should they be aiming for, and how and why? These are things that Scott Stein provided information that was very helpful for. So I think we should be honored that he's with us tonight, and I want to welcome Scott. Might you want to come over here and do your thing? Oh. The table leg wasn't locked over there, so we had a table make a big noise. Here you go, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. And I hope you don't mind if I don't wear a mask. I start gasping for air if I'm trying to speak, and wear a mask all at the same time. Are you Linda Lapierre by chance? You helped me, and I don't know if you remember that, but I had, yeah, counting the chits. I know, yeah. My name's Scott Stein, yeah, and I talked to you about the history of the Mono Post Office, and got a lot of good information out of you, which will be explained in a thing that I'm writing now for the Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District. And it has to do with where the lake was and where the monitors were, et cetera. So anyway, thank you again. I wanted to thank you personally if you were going to be here. Everybody's been calling you Linda, but there probably are other Lindas in the room too. Raise your hand if you're another Linda. What?
I always say she's our Linda.
Our Linda. Well, she's now my Linda too. So thank you. Yeah, I have been coming out here since 1979, and some of the work I'm going to talk to you about tonight concerns some work that I did in 1979. In fact, this photograph in front of you here, I don't know if you recognize any of those people. And let's see, I'm going to wear my glasses for a moment here. I guess I can do that. All right. Good. That's Dave Gaines in the middle. That's right. And this is March 30th for those historians among you. By the way, I'm a landscape historian. I study the history of landscapes rather than sort of cultural histories on land, etc. But this was on March 30th, 1979. And one of the reasons I remember that well is because on the 28th, a couple days before, 3 Mile Island went critical in the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. And I was out with the guy who you see on the left there, Bob Vokes, who was heading up at the time a program for the United States Fish and Wildlife Service about endangered habitats. And Dave Gaines, whom I had never met before, was wanting Bob to come over, and I accompanied him as sort of an unpaid consultant, come to the Mono Basin and see if the Mono Basin could be included in this whole endangered habitat thing. What they ended up having in mind was much more something along the lines of Devil's Hole or some of the patches along the Amargosa River, very small habitats that were endangered for one reason or another. And this far surpassed any size limits that could be handled with through the Fish and Wildlife program of the time. Nevertheless, we're standing out there on this particular morning, the 30th of March, and Dave Gaines is giving us sort of the rapid tour of what's going on at Mono Lake. And I learned a great deal. I had learned quite a bit about the Mono Lake controversy prior to this, but he happened to mention, as we looked out from Panem Crater there, which shouldn't be called Panem Crater, by the way. It's Panem Dome with a little bit of a tiny remaining crater around it. But anyway, we call these the Mono Craters, and they're all sticking out of the ground, right? Not very uncrater-like. But anyway, for better, for worse, we call them the Mono Craters. And we were standing on the northernmost of these, on the rim of Panem. And the lake level that day, I can testify, was 6375.00. It's 6380, very roughly today, not 00, but 6380. It was 6375. And Dave Gaines, that is, went on to explain that the significance of that lake being where it was on that particular day is that in 1857, it stood at 6376, just 1 foot higher than what we were seeing on that day. And one of my passions is climate. I've been studying climate change since 1977 or so, which is about the time that the anthropogenic signal really kicks in. In fact, if I had to put it at some month, I would say May of 1977 is when things really go haywire and have been haywire ever since. It seemed to me, and I got in a little bit of an argument, both Dave Gaines, who was very strong-willed, and I, very strong-willed, were willing to take one another on. But we had an argumentative friendship that was really productive. To argue is to get somewhere if you're doing it right. And Dave and I had a history of arguing that began right there as I'm looking down at my feet wondering, should I take this guy on or not? Anyway, it was all very gentlemanly done. And my point to him was, wait a minute, the climate prior to 1857, we'll get to the significance of that date in a second, but the climate prior to there was not such that it could have pulled Mono Lake down or sustained Mono Lake at a level basically equivalent to what Los Angeles had done in the prior 40 years of hardcore diversions. So I kind of challenged Dave on this, and I explained to him that I didn't think that was possible. Well, he had good reason to think that the lake was at 6376 feet, in that there was quite a literature on this that was citing 6376 feet back in 1857. And I started on my literature search on this, and I came up with 20 or so articles in the scientific and the legal literature, in the climatic literature, in the political / enviro literature as well. The latter being what Dave was trying to explain to us there, that look, we, the Mono Lake Committee, newly founded, wants to bring Mono Lake up to a sound level. But we're a little reluctant to ask for more than 6378 feet, which would have put the Nedget Land Bridge under 2 feet of water and solved, as it would be, one of the problems of Mono Lake and the whole controversy. He was reluctant to ask for or demand of Los Angeles more than 6378 feet. And so the Mono Lake cause, the Mono Lake Committee felt really kind of put upon by this, in quotes, fact that Mono Lake had been so low under natural conditions back in 1857. And so I went at this. I started doing work on this and produced a, let's see, this one. I'm a Mac guy for the last 20 some odd years, and this is all new ground to me. I ended up producing a monograph for the California Resources Center called A Reinterpretation of the Surface Elevation of Mono Lake, published in, depending upon what you want to believe, April 1981. Though if you want to look on the inside, it says April 1980. And I, to tell you the truth, can't remember when it was published, but it was one of those 2 dates. And both Dave Gaines and his partner at the time, Sally Judy, who became, not too long after that, Sally Gaines, were visiting me in Berkeley, where I lived a great deal. I was at this point in graduate school at UC Berkeley. And we ended up coming to an agreement that the guy who had been perpetuating this 1857 6376 foot lake level was wrong. He was wrong by about 31 feet. That the lake in 1857 actually stood at 6407 feet. And what I want to do tonight, because I haven't really shared it with anybody in the Mono Lake Committee other than Dave Gaines, who is no longer with us, as you know. But what I wanted to do was present the evidence that I had that went into this for the new lake level. but also information that I then put into my dissertation, which I was working on at the time, which turned out to be, excuse me, the past 4,000 years at Mono Lake. And this was, I don't know, chapter 1 or something like that, a rather insignificant chapter in the whole dissertation. Anyway, that's what I'll present to you tonight is all of the evidence. This sounds pretty esoteric, but it ended up having some very practical significance. So it wasn't all of academic interest. It ended up having some pretty strong political overtones that freed the Mono Lake Committee up to go after a higher lake level. But it also played into land ownership in the Mono Basin. Shortly after this came out, the California State Attorney General's office contacted me and informed me that they were in a lawsuit with the federal government over who owned the land that had been exposed because of the artificial LADWP imposed drop in lake level. Whole lot of acreage came out, as you know, still out there raising hell with the dust, etc. But who owns that land? And the state claimed that they did, and the federal government claimed that they did, and the state owned some land in the upland above the so-called relicted lands, and the federal government owned a lot of land around these lower, now relicted lands. But who owns that? And one of the possibilities was that the boundary, the land boundary, would be the first survey of the Mono Basin, or it could be the time of statehood, 1850, or it could be the time when the city of Los Angeles started diverting water. Around 1940, they start affecting the lake level. And so the new land boundary is going to be one of those three things. And they want me to come in and testify and kind of be their guy on lake levels. So that was my first real consulting gig, and I still continue to consult for state agencies, etc. Anyway, okay, so a reinterpretation of the 1857 surface elevation of Mono Lake. Why 1857? That's part of the esoterica of the whole thing. Why that date? Well, in 1855, Alexis, I prefer Alexis because that's what I always called him. Dave calls him Alexi. Waldemar von Schmidt came out in 1855 and extended the Mount Diablo baseline. And we seem to be stuck here. Let me try it with this. Okay. There's von Schmidt. I will furthermore now advance using the mouse. There's von Schmidt. He came out he came to California during the gold rush, but he was an accomplished surveyor who contracted with the United States Land Office to do the township and range surveys of the Western lands and to draw boundaries, state boundaries, township boundaries, etc. And I recommend Dave's book to you if you want to know. You all have read it already. So, but anyway, same guy, von Schmidt, and this is now 1855 when he first comes out, and it's to extend the baseline, which is this baseline right here. Can you guys see that on the screen? Okay, good. There's the baseline right there that starts at Mount Diablo, 3849 vertical feet above sea level. And it's the point that surveyors decided should be the beginning of land survey. Why? Because it sticks up above everything else around it. You can see it from many places in the Sierra Nevada. You can always get a line on the summit of Mount Diablo, so they could use it firsthand as a survey point over vast areas of California, not into Nevada, but as it turns out, Mount Diablo was the starting point for, as you can see there, most of California and all of Nevada, the land survey, the cadastral survey, the township and range survey that had to be shortly after statehood had to be established in California. Now, the way this works is that the baseline is a north-south, the starting point there at the summit of Mount Diablo is an intersection of the Mount Diablo meridian, this line here, north-south, and the Mount Diablo baseline, east-west, this one right here marked baseline. And if you were to proceed to, say, that point right there, you would be at Township 1 North, Range 1 East. And by the time you get out here, you might be at Township 16, Township 1 North, Range 16 East. And by the time you get out here by the Mono Basin, you could be, for example, let me move that up just a little. God, this thing is touchy. I don't know how you non-Mac users do it. And it keeps disappearing too. So anyway, by the time you get out to the Mono Basin area, right about there, where I'm showing it, you would be at Township 2 North, because you're now 2 townships off the line, Range 26 East. And each one of these townships, as you may know, and I can show you on this next slide here, I'll come back to that one. Here is, oh boy, Dave, yeah, this is going to be a problem with that funny bar up there. This, I believe, is Township 2 North, Range 27 East, okay? And it says it at the top, but we're not able to see it there. But you can see down there at the bottom, Mono Lake, right? See the Mono Lake down there? You guys have that? And the busy screen. This section right here would be section 1. There's section 2, section 3. There's section 4, and you guys can read section 4. There's section 5, 6, and then look, you don't go back to the beginning again, you drop down, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 36 then ending up right here. So it starts here, it ends there at 36. Each one of these sections, 1 square mile, okay? 1 square mile. 80 chains, because that's the instrument that was used by the surveyors to establish these lines. Now, each one of these sections was established very precisely according to the rules of, let's see, if I want to go backwards now, Dave, how do I do? Okay, there it is. It worked this time. Okay, good. Surveyors General of Public Lands, United States, for those surveying districts established in the years since 1850. You can't see the date at the bottom of this, but it's 1855. And oops, I'm holding this perhaps too far away. I'll try better out there in Zoomlandia. Hopefully they were able to hear me. Anyway, this was established, this version came out in 1855, and it's 500 and some odd pages long. Exactly what you do when you come to a common quarter. You dig a pit. From that pit to the north, south, east, and west of the, you build a mound. From the 4 pits that you've dug, you have to put charcoal into that mound so it will persist for decades to come, so people will be able to find this common quarter, et cetera, et cetera. And he did it meticulously. His surveys and his plats, his maps, and his survey notes are known for being really precise, tough to read, as you will see momentarily. So let's see, there's one of them, and I just want to point out a few things here. Hopefully you guys can read that right there. Can you guys read that? It says Indian Trail. So there's more than just vertical and horizontal lines on here. There's a great deal of information he was somebody who always tried and did it successfully to get along with the native people. He seemed to have a sense that he was trespassing. Yeah, sorry, I'm marking up your land with all these totally unnatural vertical east-west, north-south lines, but I promise not to make a mess of things, and I'll leave you alone. So I don't know of any altercations that he had on site. I hope there weren't any. Tension. All right. You guys might know this part of Mono Lake. It's the very northern shoreline right there, and you can see a stream coming in right there. That's Bridgeport Creek. Though he didn't call it Bridgeport Creek, there is a sulfur spring right there. That's Walford Spring. This thing right here is Kirkwood Spring, and he has it marked as a marsh there. Anyway, there's more than just vertical and horizontal lines. There's a lot of information about the nature of the land, and it behooves you, if you're interested in history of the landscape, to get yourself copies of these plats and mull over them. Okay, so 36 sections, each a mile by a mile. The total township there, the entire thing, 6 miles by 6 miles, 36 square miles. Okay, that's not his writing, but that's the writing that was used. And I'll read you this one right here. I wanted to read you the top one, but on east on a line between sections 14 and 23, that's an east-west line separating 14 from 23, set a charred post on the northwest bank of Mono Lake for corner to fractional sections 14 and 23, made mound, pits, and trenches as required per instructions, land level third rate. And he always characterized the land as being first rate, although I think there was 1 or 2 mentions of first rate. He had 10 or 11 second rate. Most of the land in the Mono Basin he characterized as third rate, either flat third rate, rolling third rate, broken third rate, because the reason they were doing this was for agricultural purposes, and ultimately agricultural purposes, so people could settle the land. Let's go back for 1 second here and show you that at each one of these section lines that intersected Mono Lake, for example, that point right there, everybody see that? Right there, he established a meander point there, because not only did he establish these linear features out here, but he also established the curvilinear, sometimes highly detailed curvilinear shape of the lake. So he would always, over here, talk about the meandering he did with compass and chains. X number of chains in this direction, then it bent a little bit out that way, bent a little bit. So he meticulously meandered the shoreline as well. Okay, so I'm going to just say a very few things to kind of acquaint you with some of the important townships here in what I have to tell you tonight. This is Township 2 North, Range 26 East. Really important spot right there in section 11 that we'll be coming back to. Really important spot right here in section 19, which we'll be coming back to. This is Mill Creek here. Both to the east and west of Mill Creek, there are tiny spring rills, and he talks about these spring rills there as well. All 3 of those are still there today. Mill Creek, though struggling, is still there today. Here's DeChambeau Creek over here in section 19, coming into a symbol that he described as a willow thicket. Okay, so he didn't actually go all the way to the shore there to the meander post. Anyway, a whole bunch of stuff on here. You guys kind of know where you are. This would be Black Point, this area right in through here. And you will perhaps recognize this as Rush Creek, Mono Lake out here, Rush Creek coming in with its tributaries. He referred to this as Lake Creek in 1856. He finished the survey in 57, but this particular township here was done in 1856. Here's Roscoe Creek. This is the Rush Creek Delta protruding into the lake. Here is the Lee Vining Creek Delta protruding into the lake there. This is what I call the Horse Creek embayment right there. Western embayment would be what I call the western embayment would be over here. Why do I put this one in? I guess it's because of something we can come back to, but I did want to point out Dry Creek, which he called Dry Creek as a description and which then became a toponym, Dry Creek. Sort of like Walker's Lake became Walker Lake, and we don't think about Walker anymore. Why is Dry Creek dry? Anybody know? Because 600 years ago, there was an eruption of the Mono craters that involved not just Panem, which was the last thing to come in, but basically the northern half or more of the Mono craters and domes. And man, did it spew. And all of that land just to the east of the Mono craters out there, including all of this land here, this rough broken mountains right here being the Mono craters, it was blanketed in many, many feet of highly porous tephra, volcanic ash. And today when it rains out there, you don't see little rills. Prior to that eruption, the water would have run off and would have gone down that stream, and that's how that stream was actually carved. But now the water doesn't run off anymore, it simply infiltrates the land, leaving the landform, a paleo landform from 600 years ago. Okay. I put this in, and I guess you guys aren't going to be able to read this, but this is where South Tufa is, right in through here. So this would be the eastern half of the Rush Creek, Delta. And I put a note there that was straight out of his notes that said, maybe I can read it better off of here. It said, set post here, one chain short of the corner. So he couldn't get to the corner right there. Why? Well, because along a stream, along Rush Creek, there's a lot of riparian vegetation, a lot of willows, cottonwoods, etc. So once again, in a manner that or for reasons that I described earlier on, he couldn't get to where his line would actually hit Mono Lake. So he stated there that he had to set it one chain 66 feet short of the actual lake level. So he is plotting the lake level on here as it existed at the time he was there, very, very accurately. And when he couldn't get to it, he stated it and then walked through the willows to estimate how far from the lake he was. All right. The reason that they can't get this is because they're using literally a chain, a 66-foot long chain that weighs a fair amount, and you've got to keep it in a straight line. Well, if you're in a willow thicket, it's hard to keep that chain straight, right? So when you come to the willow thicket, you have to work around it. He did a somewhat similar thing here, one chain 30 links short of the actual lake margin. I only point these out again to stress that he was going to the lake shore as it existed at the time. And when When he couldn't make it, he estimated the distance and stated it. So we have a really good record here, not only the township and range system and where the rivers were and where the Indian trails were and where the Indian corrals were, as he called them, etc. We've got a great record of where Mono Lake stood at the time. Now, somebody mentioned Russell. Russell was here in 1881, 82, and 83. This is Israel Russell. And Russell was a landscape lover like myself, who was a terrific writer. I hope that all of you have read his history of Mono Valley, quaternary history of Mono Valley. Essential reading, really, really great. And I would like to show him a bunch of things if he were here. I would like to ask him a bunch of questions. But my foremost question would be, good God, Israel, when you're eating dinner, how do you find your mouth? That mustache is like 2 times too long, right? Anyway, an admirable guy, and who wrote a really great monograph on the Mono Basin as it existed in 1883, and as it existed during the time that he was studying, the last couple million years. One of the things that he insisted upon was that people would be able to use his maps to come out and find themselves years, decades, maybe even centuries later. He was a guy who thought in centuries. I'd like to think that I do as well. But he knew that Mono Lake fluctuated widely, and so he had his topographer chisel an inverted T, an upside down T, onto one of the spires on Nedget Island to mark where the lake was at the time he was here. He had, I don't know if he had a barometer, but they could get approximate lake levels by boiling water and taking the temperature, that being a function of atmospheric pressure, which is to some extent a function of your elevation. So they could approximate it. He thought that Mono Lake in 1883, when he was here, was at 6,380 feet. Thank goodness he chiseled the inverted T, which looks like that. You can start to see it there. And there's another closer picture of it there. I thought when I went out there in 1979 or 80, I thought that I was going to discover this for the first time. Nobody else found this. So it turns out there was a rather well-known expedition out there that involved, in 1951, that involved, among others, Don Banta. And there's a picture of him looking totally kid-like, standing next to this thing, all proud and everything, with his little boyish grin on his face. And he was a big help to me, by the way, in my work. If I had a question about the landscape and the history, half the time he said, gee, Scott, I don't know. Always trust someone who's willing to say, I don't know. Right? Anyway, he wasn't making it up. Some of the people I had out here as sort of informers, boy, if they didn't know, they just came up with a story, and nothing could have been more obvious than it wasn't correct. But anyway, we could go out then. I went out and I measured this, the elevation of that, and it's 6,410 vertical feet above sea level. Okay? 6,410 in 1883. So remember, darn it, 6,376 feet is Lynch's 1857 lake level. 6,410 feet is the lake level in 1883. So if you believed Lynch, and I don't think I mentioned Lynch yet, all of these references to the lake being at 6,376 feet in 1857, they could all be traced back to one source, Henry B. Lynch, 1933. He was a consulting engineer for the Metropolitan Water District who did some work out here. And I'll say more about how it is that he came up with 6376 in a little while, but please do keep 6376. That's Lynch's 1857 lake level. Lake level 6410 feet in 1883. And to put it in perspective, 6380 feet is today's lake level there. And I didn't really mean to be quite so emphatic, remember, but I thought maybe it would help you remember. So here's 1857 back here. Actually, that's 1857 right there. And Harding, I'll tell you more about Harding in a second. Harding was one of the people who was out there with Don Banta. But Harding also tried to connect 1853 with 6410 in 1883, okay, when Russell was out there, because they had the mark. They had his mark. They knew the lake was at 6410. They thought the lake was at 6357, so they used San Francisco, Sacramento, and Stockton, all of which have records, meteorological records, daily meteorological records going back to 1849. So we know, at least along the coast, when the wet years were, when the dry years were, et cetera. And they both attempted to connect what they thought was the 1857 lake level with Russell's 1883 lake level. And they're quite different. 1861-62, both of them have the lake rising like a rocket ship there. That in many places in California is still the wettest year on record. But 1862-63 and 1863-64 were back-to-back driest years on record in California. There have subsequently been a few drier ones, but not much drier than that. So Lynch shows the lake dropping at that time. Harding is really in a hurry to get the lake up, and he doesn't really pay much attention to the dry years. He just wants to connect the dots, 1857, 6376, and 1883, 6410. All right, well, Timothy O'Sullivan, what does that bring to mind? Timothy O'Sullivan was a famous Civil War photographer. The dead of Gettysburg, all of the mutilated bodies laying around Gettysburg, still in uniform, but disgustingly dead, just from lining up in rows and shooting at one another. He was probably the most famous of the Civil War photographers. When the Civil War ended, he joined forces with Clarence King on the geological exploration of the 40th parallel. And he became the photographer for the 40th parallel expedition. And I guess before reaching Carson City, where they were going to all meet to go eastward in the vicinity of the 40th parallel, which would be north of Lake Tahoe, he took some photos, the first two photographs that I know of in the Mono Basin. So here's Mono Lake in 1867, first photo. Panem Crater, right? Or Panem Dome with an insinuation of a crater in there somewhere. But look out beyond Panem Crater, if you would, and you can see the Horse Creek embayment right there. And then you can see a little inlet related to Levining Creek right there. And just south of that is this rather rectilinear peninsula right there, okay? Now, if we go back for a moment to Lynch's line here, we would see that in 1867, he would have the lake be at about 6378 feet, which would be right about there, 6378 feet. Okay, that's where Lynch would have it. That's a better look, or at least a little expanded look of O'Sullivan's 1867 thing there. The lake that they would have at 6378 is the lake level at the time I reoccupied the photo spot and took this photograph. Okay, so here's what the lake actually looks like when the lake level is at 6,378 feet. And there's this big protuberance right here, which is what I call Levining East tufa. Okay, and I think the next slide there is that tufa grove sticking out. Well, look again at O'Sullivan's photo. That is not on there. The lake is obviously much higher in 1867 than Lynch would have it be in 1867 because he was locked in to the lake having been so low in 1857. Is that sort of making some sense to folks? Good, I hope so. Yeah, what I did was to go back to this spot. This is supposedly 6,378 feet. I took a photograph from the same place when the lake is actually at 6,378 feet. And boy, is the lake ever higher in is the lake ever higher in 1867 than Lynch would have it, much, much higher. Is that a hand? No, okay. All right, now here's another photograph looking a lot like the last one, but this one was taken by Russell in 1883. You can see the background there. There's once again the Horse Creek embayment, and there is Levining Creek Inlet there, and there's that rectilinear peninsula, not the big tufa peninsula that we saw, but looking very, very much like it did in O'Sullivan's 63, in O'Sullivan's, I haven't had dinner yet. I eat one meal a day, and it's dinner, and it's a little past my deadline. So all I've had today is whatever nutrition was in this piece of sugarless gum. So if I lose it here and start drooling, you'll know why. Anyway, let's see. No, we're going to go back a couple. There is the lake at 6,378 feet, and here it is at O'Sullivan's 1867, and here it is looking a great deal like that in Russell's 1883. Okay. Point is that photographs can be used to get at least some hints of not just where the lake might have been, but where it certainly was not at certain times. Wanted to throw in just a few maps that I'll bet most of you are familiar with already. This is the Eddy map of 1853. Now, as you guys know from Todd Fletcher's book, Todd Fletcher was a student of mine. Todd Fletcher was my TA at Berkeley, and when I was working out here, he would come out and diligently hold the stadia rod for me when we were doing elevation work, and he really wanted to do field work for a master's thesis, but his wife got sick and stayed sick and stayed sick, until the two of them a few years ago decided to end it all for one another. And it was a double suicide. Todd was a wonderful guy, but loved his wife very much, and where she was going, he wanted to go. He had this particular map in his book that you're all familiar with, and he mentioned the Eddy map. I don't think he mentions one in 1853 called the Trask map, which has this but doesn't have the islands. In any case, Todd's great contribution in his book, the really original thing there, was he was able to find documents written by Lieutenant Treadwell Moore, who were the ones who followed Chief Tenaya into the Mono Basin. And that's a sad, sad story, and things have never been the same. In any case, Treadwell Moore went and drew a little sketch map. He and a guy named McLean did a little sketch map of Mono Lake when they were out here. And that was the basis for this map of 1854 with the two islands. Everybody was stuck on these islands. They loved the islands. This map here from 1857, there's Mono Lake right there. Unfortunately, the bottom part of it covered up because of those in Zoomlandia. I hope you realize what you people are doing to this presentation. Oh, really? Okay. Well, lucky you guys. David Hurst, whoever you are, you're depriving the rest of us of a view of Mono Lake. But anyway, this was done in 1857. Here's a different view, though. Again, 1857, but this was done by George Goddard, who was one of the surveyors on these exploration of the 40th parallel type extravaganzas, where they went out and they did the science as science existed on the land, stretching degrees either side of, in this case, the 40th parallel. And here is the shape of the of Mono Lake, looking a lot more like Mono Lake, than the others that you were seeing there. That is duplicated then in this one from 1861 by G.K. Warren. Warren as in Warren Bench and Mount Warren right behind us here. One of my favorite places for reasons that I'll give you another talk on someday if you can stand me by that point. In any case, then there's this one here. And is that showing up? Okay, here's Mono Lake looking like Mono Lake should. People haven't really been out mapping the islands yet, but the reason this looks so much like Mono Lake should is that this is based on von Schmidt's township survey. So all of the townships that von Schmidt surveyed are on here, in the correct place, and Mono Lake is shown as he drew it, and it's a great rendering of Mono Lake as it existed at the time he finished his survey, 1857. By 1861, others are now have access to this and are using that as a rendering of Mono Lake. I had something else that I was going to bring along, and it's sitting on my floor at home in Point Reyes Station, California. But it related to this. All combat takes place at night in the rain and at the junction of 4 map segments. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the USGS quads, the 15-minute series of Mono Lake. But since 119 degrees north intersects with 119 degrees north intersects with 120 degrees west, right in the middle of Mono Lake there, we have 4 different maps. By the way, it's in Wag the Dog. Anybody see Wag the Dog? Oh, you guys have to see this. It's politics. It's politics at its ugliest, which it hadn't become yet in 1997, but it has now become exactly what Wag the Dog was about. So get Wag the Dog. What is he saying? Why is he saying it? You're asking yourself right now. Okay, well, because I'm going to show you these 4 map segments. This particular one right here is the Cow Track Mountain Quadrangle. And I hope you guys are going to be able to see, for example, these north lines right here. Okay, that's one of von Schmidt's section lines, and it ends right there. Why does it end there? Because that's where the lake was at the time von Schmidt did his survey. Likewise, this line here ends there. Why? Because that's where the lake was, etc. Why do these 2 lines end right there? Because that's where the lake was in 1856 1957. Where is the lake shown on this map? I think it is May of 1962, and the lake level is 6395 feet. So where was the lake in 1857? Well, it was upslope of 6395 feet. It was higher than 6395 feet, right? See what I'm doing there? I'm using these maps. I'm using von Schmidt's points of lakeshore, and I'm able to show on here that the lake stood appreciably higher in 1857 than it stands now on this map in 1962. Here's a close-up of it. Should have remembered that I put this one in. You can see that the section lines here are falling well short of the shoreline of 1962, that shoreline being 6395. The conclusion then from all of these being that the lake has to have been above 6395 feet in 1857, not 6376 feet in 1857. I did a little comparison here in this publication and compared where the 6376 would be with where von Schmidt had it, which was the solid line. This would be 6376 feet. And this dashed line here is the lake as it existed on the map, on the quadrangle itself. Okay, moving to another one. All four of these come together in the lake. This is the monocraters quadrangle, and this is based on photographs from 1951, year after I'm born. And the lake at the time was 6409 feet. And here is what some of these lines look like. Look at this one right here. It's subtle, but von Schmidt's section line goes beyond the shoreline. Can people see that? Okay, right there, likewise, goes just beyond the shoreline at 6409 feet. Likewise there. Likewise, these two right here, I hope you guys, can you see that from where you're sitting? Okay, good. And likewise, this one up here, the northwestern corner. So what do we conclude from this? Well, that the lake shown on the map here, the shoreline shown on this map, is higher than it was when von Schmidt did his surveying out there. Not by much, but it would seem to be higher than it was at the time von Schmidt did his work. So from this, we conclude that the lake must have been a little bit lower than 6409 feet, not 6376 feet. A little bit below 6409, a little bit above 6395. So far, we can conclude that. And here's the comparison. This is very interesting to me in that, no, I don't have time to do this. Okay, here is, if I talk too long here, you guys are going to be hungry again. Here's Mono Lake as it existed in 1958, lake level 6402 feet. And I have a close-up there. Notice that von Schmidt's section lines are stopping well short of the existing shoreline of 1958. That is, they're stopping above 6402 feet, which would mean then that the lake must have been in 1857 above 6402 feet by some amount. So it's below 6409, it's above 6402 in 1857. Now this area here is a place that many of you know well, and many of you love, from what I understand. These are the DeChambeau ponds, so-called today. This is the county ponds as they exist today for reasons that we can talk about in a little while. And there is this complex topography right here shown on the map of 1958. on the Bodie quadrangle, this one is. Okay, and we're going to come back to that in a little while, because if the lake rises just a little bit from 6402 feet, if we could get the lake to 6402 feet today and bring it to about 6405 feet, what happens is that the lake engulfs this little embayment right here. There's a bar, a wave transported bar that cuts off the so-called pond. It's actually a lagoon, cuts off the lagoon from the lake. But when the lake gets just a little bit higher than 6402, this becomes inundated and it becomes an embayment there. And don't have to do that. Okay, well, there's the embayment right there. Okay, the lake is high enough in 1857 for the lake to have engulfed that little embayment there. And we can say a great deal about fairly precisely where the lake was here. We know it's above 6402, below 6409, but this was this area right here, which is this area right here on Google Earth, okay, which is this area right here on some snaps I took of Google Earth. And I'll get to these a little bit later. We're going to come back to those. This area right here is the most intricate place that von Schmidt had to deal with in his meandering of the shoreline. This took him a long, long time. And I think, yeah, you can't see all of these, but here's section 11 right here. And those of you at home in the comfort of your own living rooms can see that there are 17 different trajectories that von Schmidt had to do to get all the intricacies on this little embayment right here. Why is that an embayment, by the way? Well, let's go back for a second and I can show you that all of these things here are spits. So there's a spit right there, and there's a spit here with a hook on it, and there's a spit here with a hook on it, and all of that material is black point cinder. And it's there as these wave deposited embankments because Mono Lake, when the lake is up around 6,400 feet, Mono Lake is breaking its waves against Black Point, causing a bunch of sloughing off the surface, off the side of Black Point, and then the waves and the littoral currents are carrying that material down current, in this case to the north. And that's the reason that these DeChambeau ponds here exist. The ponds themselves are nothing more than this land. Same land that's out here is there. It's just that they have been covered up for the most part. This type land has been covered up by all of these littoral embankments coming off of Black Point there. Okay, so we'll come back, as I say, to those. I went out in 1979 with, 1980 with Peter Vorster holding the stadia rod for me for a short period of time, and Todd Fletcher doing it for a short period of time. And I was able to, on the ground, figure out precisely within plus or minus 1 foot of where the lake would have to be to give us this configuration. Not only the configuration shown on von Schmidt's plats, but the configuration that would match all of his meandering changes that he documented there. And that elevation is 6407 plus or minus 1 foot. Again, a little bit below 6409, which we inferred from the maps, a little bit above 6402, but 6407 is the only thing that works there. And from that, I would conclude then that Mono Lake stood at 6407 in 1857. So compared to Harding's line and Lynch's line, here's what the Department of Water Power used to mockingly call the Stein line. You know, they wanted the lake to be low. They were using this politically. They were saying what Dave Gaines thought they were saying, but Dave Gaines thought they were doing it credibly. I think by that time, they thought they were doing it credibly too. And that is that we, the city of Los Angeles, by diverting the influent streams to Mona Lake, are doing nothing more than Mother Nature did only 120 years ago. And they were kind of making hay of this. And it was liberating to the Mona Lake Committee to learn that this supposed 6376 foot elevation was actually 6407. Okay, now one last critical place that I want to talk to you about. It's on this same map. It's right here. It's not in section 11, which was the locus of all of what we were just talking about here. It's in the same township, Township 2 North, Range 26 East. I don't know what that means. Dave? There we go. Good. We're now in section 19 of Township 2 North, Range 26 East, and there's something very, very peculiar going on right here. Von Schmidt says that he stopped his survey right here. Why? This is County Park. Okay, this is where the County Park is. This is where DeChambeau Creek comes into Mona Lake right there. County Park is right there where the county boardwalk is and all of that. Something that the Carls know well. Never pulled their gun all the years they were out here. I never told them that, but I always thought that was really admirable. Anyway, they know the boardwalk there very well, and this is the area that we're talking about. So keep that configuration there in mind and look at it a little bit bigger there. Darn. See this little thing with all the dots? The thing with all the dots. Okay, so maybe it'll take away all this. Did I just take away the thing with all the dots? Just click something. Click something, Scott. Oh, here, I can drag it. There we go. All right. Yay. Good. Good. Next time I talk to you guys, I'll have this whole thing mastered. Yeah, anyway, you can see Matley down there. This is from another survey. Now, everything south of that dashed line, which is dashed for kind of a peculiar reason, was a survey that was done decades after Von Schmidt's. Von Schmidt stopped it there because he came up against the Sierra Nevada, and surveying steep terrain is very difficult, if only because what you need to be mapping here is flatland lines. And it's tough to get the flatland distance when you're on very, very steep land like that. So it's another calculation that they would have to be making. The other thing is there's not going to be much in the way of farming that's going on there. So he felt justified in stopping right there. That's where he stopped his survey right there. Well, so what I did was I took now the 7.5 minute series, the Lundy quadrangle from 1986, and that's not really all that important, but I drew on there, traced on there, the configuration of Von Schmidt's line. Okay, 6407, we now know, independent of whatever I'm saying here. And you can see that this line segment right here quite nicely parallels the contour. Well, it should. The shoreline is a contour. Shoreline is about the best approximation of a contour that you can get. So this is quite nicely paralleling the contour here. Oh, I forgot. Thank you. Okay. It wasn't worth hearing anyway. Yeah. No one has ever told me in my entire life to talk more loudly. So, and here, this line, Von Schmidt's line, again, parallels the shoreline or the contour quite nicely. But then what in the heck was von Schmidt thinking? He went bam at near right angles to the contour, and he ended his shoreline, his meandering survey right there at that point right there. Now there are 41 places where his section lines intersected Mono Lake. 41 places, and I showed you a number of these. This is the only one that gives such a low lake level. What's the lake level? 6376. This is where Lynch got his 6376 feet. He ignored 40 of the points, and he used this one point right here, arguing that, of course, von Schmidt would have been more careful on this one, because this is where future surveyors are going to have to start their survey. So one would have to believe that von Schmidt there in section 11 was out there doing all of this little intricate work that took hours and hours and hours to do, but the shoreline was actually way down there, right? This was the origin then of the 6376 foot contour right there. And Los Angeles was wont to give up on this, but they finally did give up on it and admitted that the lake was, as if to outdo me, not at 6407. They wanted it to be at 6408. Okay, fine, 6408. And the state courts, the federal courts accepted 6407. The State Water Resources Control Board accepted 6407. So it's now pretty well set in stone that this so-called mockingly Stein line, and I don't call it that, but that is von Schmidt's elevation in 1857. By the way, I don't know what von Schmidt was thinking. I have no idea why he would have done this, except to say that he encountered a whole bunch of willows in here. I showed you those willows early on, and he may have just thrown his hand up and said, guys, it's getting late in the day. Sun's behind the Sierra Nevada. You know, and let's this is the end of our survey. Let's draw the line here. So they did. They drew what I think has to be considered a spurious line, and it's been a problem ever since. This was not the only thing von Schmidt did that turned out to be problematic, and I'll let Dave Carl tell you about that someday, probably for the second or third time. But anyway, he was an admirable guy, von Schmidt, and a really first-rate surveyor whose work can be used to come up with the 1857 lake level. So remember how I'm asking instead of demanding? 76 feet, Lynch's 1857, lake level 6410 in 1883, 6407 feet, the lake level in 1857, as we now know it to be, and 6380 feet today's lake level. I would ask that there are questions now, but I did tell you that I would come back to just a couple things here and show you what's going on at those ponds now. That's, I think, kind of interesting, and I promise you I won't take much longer here. Here are the ponds, and you can see an alluvial fan right here. Right, that alluvial fan. You see another one right here? That alluvial fan. This is so-called Wilson Creek. Wilson Creek didn't exist under natural conditions, but water was diverted into Wilson Creek, and Wilson Creek cut down then and created a huge amount of material that it then splayed out here as a big alluvial fan. And you can walk over this today. It's very, very different than the soil type to either side of that alluvial fan. It was the incision caused by the diversion of Mill Creek water into Mill Creek that caused the stream here to incise and cause that to form. This is the DeChambeau, so-called DeChambeau branch of Wilson Creek. Most of the water for a long time went out in this direction. It did a bunch of cutting and created an alluvial fan over here that I'll show you momentarily that really wrecked an awful lot of the DeChambeau land, which used to be pretty good grazing land. Here's the other branch. This is, by the way, 1929, this particular photograph. Here's the other branch. And in 1929, only a little bit of that Wilson Creek water was flowing down here. These are the McGann lands. They had Mill Creek water diverted onto them, and it was the runoff from the Mill Creek, from the McGann lands there, that caused a tiny bit of incision right through here. And there is the McGann lands, and here is that tiny bit of incision. And I hope you guys have all been able to look into Wilson Creek. It's 45 feet deep with vertical sides. But in 1929, you used to be able to drive your car right across there because there was a road that went across there. Anybody who drove that road today and came and didn't stop would be as dead as everyone on the Timothy O'Sullivan photographs. It's very, very deep, and it is because Mill Creek water is flowing down the arroyo here and deepening this thing. Now you can see that not much erosion has occurred here yet, but nor has the erosion. This is the DeChambeau Ranch. Here's the alluvial fan here. There's not much erosion there yet either. And it's just starting to form in 1940 on these 1940 photographs. But already a lot of land that used to be arable on DeChambeau Ranch was covered up because of the diversion of Mill Creek water over here. Let's see, like 2 or 3 more slides. Here's the arroyo that is starting to, by 1940, starting to erode, and there's a little bit of an alluvial fan there now. And don't you hate it when people do this? And here is now modern day arroyo reach, and you can see that there is a lot of marshland down here. This entire thing would be marshland, but this is all cobble gravel and pebble gravel covering up that marshland. Why? Because of Mill Creek water having been diverted, this having incised, all of that material having been deposited on what would otherwise today be some of the best marshland around Mono Lake. Okay, well, so now I won't try and find the slide, but I said cues. So I will be more than happy to try and answer any questions you might have about any of this. Okay, do I need to stop sharing? All right.
Okay, here's the people. And
Wow.
yeah, wow. How many
Margaret Eisler. Hi, Maggie.
since 37?
Greg Reese. Hello, Greg. Greg, I read your little blurb about water in the Point Reyes light there. Good for you. Tim Messick. Wow. One of the consultants. Oh, Tim. Dave Marquardt. Should I go through the Connie Millar is here. Hi, Connie.
You want to go to the chat? Yeah, why don't you do it? Do you need the microphone?
Can you say more about May 1977 being the dawn of the
Anthropocene.
Was there an event or threshold that you can point to? And this is from Steve Moore.
It was Steve Moore, who I don't think I know. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put the Anthropocene there, but that's when California climate goes haywire. And if you look at climate prior to 1976, really, we didn't have nearly the extremes that we started to get in 1976. In 76, much of California had its driest year on record, only to be outdone by 1977. And then 78, 79 were sort of like the old days, but then 1980 was really wet, 81 normal, 82 super wet, in many places the wettest year in the history of California, only to be outdone by 1983. And then 1984, 85, a little drier than normal. 1986, again, really, really wet. So beginning in the mid-1970s there, we've kind of lost the normal years, and now we're trying to balance very dry years against very wet years. And that's when it started. There are other reasons to think that's when things, as I say, really started to go haywire. I did my postdoc at Columbia University in New York with a guy named Wally Broker, who probably none of you have heard of, but he was the one who coined the phrase global warming in 1972 or 1973, something like that. So when I went to Lamont, it was because I had spent time with him out here, and he wanted me to pursue my work in the Mono Basin. But boy, was I indoctrinated, scientifically indoctrinated about climate change and anthropogenic climate change. And I suppose, unlike an awful lot of people, it was probably science that made me a hardcore environmentalist rather than me backing into it because of aesthetics or something like that. I came into it because it scares the hell out of me. And quite frankly, it's going to eat us alive. And there's not a lot of way out of it right now. So anybody want to ask me a more uplifting question?
Here we go, Barry McPherson. Okay, Barry McPherson asks, Roscoe Creek, who was Roscoe? Looks like that creek was renamed Levining Creek later on.
It was renamed Levining Creek by 1861. Roscoe was probably one of the people in the Treadwell Moore Company, because there was another stream named McLean. You again don't know which stream this is because they drew Mono Lake in such a cockamamie way, but the streams tended to be named apparently after people who were in Treadwell Moore's company.
Okay. Now we've got Deanne. She's asking, what are the variations in lake level in relationship to times of the year, runoff and snowfall pack, perhaps and early?
Sure. So the lake usually reaches, can't say this anymore. The lake used to reach its high stand in sort of summerish. If it had been a very, very wet year, the peak inflow was going to be very often 4th of July. When I was out here in the early 80s, and in some of those very wet early 80s, man, 4th of July, and I can't wade across the streams. Now that has changed so very much. And not only is the peak inflow usually much earlier than that, sometimes March, April is peak inflow time, but the peak level of the year now is much more like April, May, June. June is a peculiar year, I think, where you would actually reach the high, though I would leave that to Greg Reese and others, because they follow these kinds of intricacies much more than I do. The lake low stand is usually wintertime, usually around the first of the year, end of one year, the first of the other year. So there is this real strong seasonal signal. One of the things that's happened, I should note, since 1976 is that, and boy, I notice this when I sleep out here, when I'm outside sleeping, it used to get cold at night. The days are getting warmer, but most of global warming in temperate latitudes like we live in, not just here, but through temperate latitudes throughout the northern hemisphere, most of the warming is at night. Nights don't cool off anymore. Why? Because we've got a greenhouse blanket over us that didn't used to be there to the same thickness that it is now. And that is what is, helping to melt snow so much earlier than it did before. So, yeah.
Okay. So Steve Moore is asking, did Von Schmidt place any kind of physical marker at the end of his section lines at the lake intersection? Because I'm impressed that the GS maps show this much precision of those section lines ending above current lake level.
Yeah, good point, Steve. Steve. Good point. What they did, and I don't want to screw things up and go back to if you have the 15-minute series maps around, Steve, take a look at it. He didn't place monuments at the terminus of the lines, at the intersection of the line and the lakeshore, but he did place monuments that can still be found today. I've found maybe 10 of these things, 10 or 12 maybe, something like that. And then taking Von Schmidt's measurements, the number of chains and links, I don't know if I mentioned links, 100 links to a chain, take the number of chains and links and project them east, west, north, south, depending upon where you are, from that well-established monument. That's how USGS establishes the termini of those lines. And it's quite precise.
Okay, let's see. Now we've got a lot of comments about what a wonderful presentation this is.
And what a terrific human being. Yeah, we can, I appreciate it. Thank you for your kind attention.
Wondering if we were going to wrap up in 2 or 3 hours. People are enjoying this so much.
You're being,
need to eat.
Robin, you're making this shit up, Robin.
No,
Can't possibly.
It keeps going on and on. Love you, Scott. That's Connie Millar.
Connie Millar, I love you too, Connie.
Let's see. I'm just looking for any other.
Yeah, any other, and maybe you guys have a question. Oh, by anybody have a copy? Probably some of you have a copy in your back pocket of Russell's monograph, published by Artemisia Press. Well, it's on there. It's not a great rendering, but there's a little X. And I have, well, I can show you 6410 as 64. Oh, it's visible, as I hope I showed you there. It's visible, but I can show you, this is going to come across like, want to come to my room at the Mono Lake Committee? It isn't that, but I do have a copy, and we can look at my map, and I will show you on my map. Or if you wanted to stick around, I could go get it. It would be less embarrassing for everybody. And I can show you precisely where it is. It's very easy to find. Oh, all right. How can you find the inverted T on Nedget Island was the question, and I was trying to explain how perhaps you could, but if you have a copy of Russell, then you can get the little X, and it's southwestern corner if Nedget Island has a corner, but check out the map before you go, and it's a very prominent. Yeah, but anyway, No, and let's make sure there isn't GPS
Yeah.
coordinates too. Yeah. What else among you folks? Anything?
Okay, well, other than you inviting people back to your room,
Right.
I think this was a wonderful presentation. And thank you so very much, Scott. This was great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank everyone for attending both Zoom and in person. This has been a great turnout, and we will see you all next month, July 5th, which is a Tuesday, the day after the 4th of July, with our presentation with Rich Foy. So thank you all.
I got one more thing. Scott mentioned Fletcher's book a few times, Paiute Prospectors and Pioneers. Paiute Prospector and Pioneer is the title of that book. So yeah, so not everybody probably has read that book. And it's difficult to find except at the Mono Basin History Museum. We've got copies of it. So.
Yes, reprints. And then we have a photograph of Don Banta at the marker, so you can see that. Yeah, yeah, you would never, anyway.
So not to drag it.
Yeah.
But come to the museum. It's open every day starting this next week. And we've got a lot of books for sale, including this biography of von Schmidt that you might want to look for too.
I have signed copy, actually.
So thank you again very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.